Well, welcome, Chris Mlalazi. It's so nice to have you with us. This is another podcast for the magazine Taint Taint Taint. For those who are following this in real time, the magazine was supposed to have launched last week, but we're a little behind, and we're going to launch in November. Sorry, actually, rather than November, we're going to launch in January in part because we got so much material for the magazine that we needed to take more time to get it all together. But anyways, thanks for agreeing to do this, Chris. I wanted to just mention that we first met in Kenya in 2006 at the Kwani Fest. And as I now think about it, another person who was there was Patina Gapa. I don't believe Patina had published a book at that point, and I think your first book, in fact, came out a couple of years later as well. But in any case, we were there at Kwani Fest, and for some who may know, Kwani was an organization that was founded by the late Binyavanga Wainaina, and I just wanted to mention Binyavanga and something about the kind of person he was. And I don't know if you have any thoughts about Binyavanga, Chris.
Right. It was said that he passed away. I didn't know Binyavanga much before then. I was referred to that festival by Patina Gapa. And at that moment, we were only published in short stories, like short stories and short story competitions where we were shortlisted and things like that.
Yeah. So that was, Binyavanga was a great person for bringing all types of people together, especially writers on the continent. Yeah, it's interesting that Patina was there, and one of the more recent things I believe she's done is she's published, or I don't know if it's actually been published, but she's written a play about Dem Butso Machera. I don't know if you have any thoughts about him. Are you a fan of his work at all? And he bears kind of a legendary status or infamous status. Maybe a better way of putting it.
I read Tambuzo Marechera when I was at high school, and I was pretty much impressed by his prose and poetry. Right. And he has been a major influence for many writers. In Zimbabwe, he's inspired many writers in Zimbabwe. I know a lot that try to write like him. I also tried to write like Tambuzo Marechera in the beginning as a learning process. Everyone does. Yeah, he was a legend. Yes, you're right, but very controversial. Also on the side, he's the kind of person that you read his stories and then get to just like his character.
Right. Certainly, very interesting character. I discovered recently another writer who published a book called Sunrise Poison. I think I mentioned him to you in a text earlier today. He also died very young. This writer, Philip Zwau, I believe is how you pronounce his name. Joao, okay. And he was only 27 and apparently had written 4 books, which are going to be published. And he also wrote very much in the spirit of Mbutso, very experimental. So I don't know what that means other than the fact that Machera must have had a large influence on younger writers in Zimbabwe. What about, this might be a good place to ask you about your origins, where you're from in Zimbabwe and when you began writing and that sort of thing.
Right, I'm from Bulawayo, the second largest city after Harare, and I am Ndebele. I speak Ndebele, which is also I think the second largest ethnic group in Zimbabwe. And most of my writing is set in the townships in Bulawayo, where I grew up, and also how it was impacted mostly by the politics of the 80s and 90s. Right, although when I try to write, when I begin, I will just be trying to tell a story, you know, any story, and then eventually politics comes in because it's the setting, it's the environment, you know, and there's no way to not to avoid that.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think if I were to describe your work, I would say it offers realistic glimpses of life in Zimbabwe and the townships, and often the stories are sad or tragic, but they often involve a level of humor as well. So I was thinking, for example, about one of the stories about the dictator in the book Dancing with Life, and sorry, just one second. Okay, I'm sorry. I was just saying about the story involving the dictator who loses the election, but he's not worried at all. He knows that he will still somehow win. You know, that he will remain in power. It's a very funny story, even as revealing as it is about the true, you know, politics of Mugabe, I suppose. You know, that was just a way of saying, like, I think there's often a balance of humor and tragedy in your work.
Right. That's what I try to do in most of my serious stories. They'll be tackling a serious issue, but then I try to lighten it with humor so as to make it readable by everybody, you know, that like, so that people can laugh also at their own situation and maybe even get better understanding of it. And then also, I think in doing that, obviously, I know that the people that I write about will also read that, you know. And so I'll also be trying to send a message to them that, look, you guys, what you're doing is not good. And we are sort of, everyone is mocking you, you know, like in street corners, through gossip. And so this is what I want to present to you. And so maybe you can do something about it, you know, something like that.
Okay. So when did you start writing, and when did you know that you were a writer, and how did that process happen for you?
Right, like most writers, I grew up reading books. You know, I was reading a lot of books in high school, in primary school, and then in high school, there came a time once when I thought, you know, if I can read a book and enjoy it, so why not also try to write a book, right? So I started writing a novel at high school when I was about 15, I think. I wrote it for 5 years, just writing, rewriting, and rewriting. But eventually, I threw it away. I regret why I threw it away.
Okay.
Right, it could be part of my archive. But basically, I'm a self-taught writer. I do not have formal creative writing education. I taught myself to write, and I'm still teaching myself to write.
Yeah, I think most writers learn by reading anyway. That's at least my philosophy. I know the whole MFA is a big thing in America. But who are some of the writers that you would say have had influence on your work?
Right. When I was growing up, unfortunately, in our library, we were fascinated by books from Europe, from the USA. That was what we were reading the most. And also, we were reading that so that we also could improve our English, you know, our English, so that we could, for our education at school, because our education is primarily English based. You know, Zimbabwe is a former British colony, and so English is the official language of communication. And so, but then, you know, I was reading like every boy, you know, things like Hardy Boys, Nancy Drew, Three Investigators.
Yes.
And then eventually I grew from that and started reading writers like Thoreau. And then I also tried to go into philosophy, you know, read Aristotle on my own. At first I couldn't understand, like Aristotle, I couldn't understand what he was writing about. But through countless read it again and again, I think I eventually got to understand. And then locally, there were some writers who were writing in my language, in Ndebele. In the Vele, there were several that I read their books, and their storytelling powers was pretty much impressive. And it also inspired me. Like, for example, there's one called Ukuthunjwa Sukuzukuduma. Right, it's almost like an adventure story, but with almost like an analogy of real life events.
Okay.
Right.
Wow. So I was going to ask you when you began to publish, and if you if you had any troubles through your publications in Zimbabwe, that if that, I don't know what the situation of the writer is in Zimbabwe, maybe at least in your time in coming up as a young writer.
Right. When I first started publishing my short stories, it was through newspapers, and then we were lucky that there was a publisher, Ama Books publishers, who called for short stories. And then they accepted my stories. It was my first time to be published in like anthologies. And then you came along the way. But what I want to mention is that at that time, during the Mugabe era, we were writing like pretty much, it was very scary to write, about the situation.
Yes. Because
we knew what Mugabe was capable of doing, but still we wrote those stories, still with the fear,
Yes.
And so I started publishing my stories, and the more I wrote those stories, the more I became aware of the situation in Zimbabwe.
Okay.
Because most of us were not so politically conscious, right? But through writing these stories, I started investigating things. Then I get to know, okay, so this is what is happening under Mugabe, the dictatorship, right? And then in 2008, I also wrote a political play with another writer in Zimbabwe called Raised on the Baya. And then on the second day of the play, before we got there, we delayed to get there, but the crew was already there. Like two men arrived in an unidentified car, no number plates. They abducted the manager.
Wow.
The manager of the production. They took to a river on the outskirts of the city in the bush, tortured him, beating him on the soles of his feet. They wanted to know the addresses of the playwrights, because they were saying the title of the play was called The Crocodile of Zambezi, and it depicted Mugabe. Mugabe was the central character and his alter ego. And they were saying, why are you writing about that? And so it was pretty scary. We had to go into hiding for like 2 weeks, like not going to the city, hiding at home. But eventually we overcame our fears and came out. And the manager, he fled to Botswana, the neighboring country, Botswana, and he still lives there up to now. And it was traumatic. You can imagine the fear that you now have, but still that did not stop us from writing.
Wow,
we became even more stubborn.
Yeah, wow, that is something. So when did you decide to leave Zimbabwe? Or how long have you been away, and why did you leave? I think maybe the why is obvious, but yeah.
Right. I left Zimbabwe in 2012. The reason that made me leave Zimbabwe, first, things were not working in the country. Yes. Nothing was working, and I thought that, this is not just too good for me. And then the final push was, after I'd published also with my books and another story in the newspaper, which was a political satire, I started getting phone calls from, without a number, like the person who was calling me there was no number. They would call, I would answer, and they would just listen, and then suddenly cut the call.
Wow.
And then 1 week, 2 weeks of that, it was nerve-wracking, And then I decided I wasn't telling anybody what was happening, right? Sometimes I'll just switch off my phone. But then one day I told my publisher that, look, there's somebody who's calling me from an unidentified number, and they said, no, don't worry, maybe somebody trying to fool with you. And then I also consulted other people. They said it's the secret police. They're trying to scare you, right?
Wow.
And then I thought, okay, fine. If they are calling me like this, that means they are watching me too. You know?
Wow.
And at that time, it was difficult to change your phone number. To buy a mere SIM card in Zimbabwe was like almost buying a cow, you know,
Wow.
like $400 US. So I couldn't change my SIM card.
Wow.
And then it continued. You get this call from nowhere. You're just sitting there, your phone starts ringing.
Yeah.
Or even at night, you're sleeping with your cell phone here. Then suddenly, grrr, grrr,
Wow.
grrr, grrr. And then I suddenly said, no, fuck, I'm leaving.
Yeah.
You know, I cannot live like this. No, I'm just going away. So goodbye. I left. I can also write from outside Zimbabwe.
Yeah.
Write even more. Right.
So is it fair to say, is it accurate to say that officially writers are not censored or banned in Zimbabwe, but they face this kind of intimidation? So.
Right. Officially, books are not banned, but you face this kind of intimidation, you know. And also, you become afraid almost like everybody, because by publishing, you are exposing yourself also, you know. You become afraid not only for yourself, but also for your family. The most important thing, right?
Yes.
People face this underground intimidation. I do not know how it is now, right? But like recently, this journalist on Twitter, Chinono, who has been exposing a corruption.
Hopewell.
Right? You've seen what has been happening to him.
Yes.
Right, like getting arrested, going to jail, and you know, and also during this time of COVID, imagine if they just throw you in jail for posting something on Twitter, you know.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a pretty rough terrain.
Well, I talked to Sissy Dangaremba, in fact, last week, and she was arrested, and she was talking about. So, you know, I you know, knowing her and knowing your situation, I knew that you had left some time ago, but I was actually surprised that she remained in the country, because I felt that she would be subject to arrest at some point, which indeed did happen. Yeah, but you know, one of the reasons I wanted to talk to both you and her is that I think very few people in America, surprisingly enough, very few people in America really know anything about Zimbabwe or the situation in Zimbabwe. And in fact, I was talking to one of my writer friends who's traveled on the African continent and so on, and was saying how I was trying to find ways of bringing attention to the situation in Zimbabwe. And then she said to me, well, what is the situation in Zimbabwe? You know, so even like some of the most well-informed people, and I don't know why that is, other than that there often is a lot of poor reporting about Africa in general here in America. But you know, I've been to Zimbabwe a few times, and you know, one of the things that struck me the very first time I came, one of the things that struck me is just how beautiful the country is. I mean, I'd heard all these reports about inflation and so on, but I was really surprised by the tremendous beauty of the country, and I was also disheartened by the tremendous suffering of the people, just in terms of like getting basic things like food every day, and how expensive things are and all that. So,
right. I think I can explain this one. Right. These things happen in levels in society. Like if you're an outsider, you won't be able to notice it. You won't see it.
Yes.
But it will be there. It will be operating right under your nose, right under your nose, and you don't see it because you don't know it. It's like if you let's say go to a place where the gangsters,
right?
You know, gangsters. If you're not involved in that, you don't see it.
Right.
And they don't mind you because you're not involved. But once you get involved, that's when your eyes get opened. Zimbabwe is like that. There is something under the surface.
Yes.
Right. Something happening under the surface. And as you know, also, we have a government-owned press and also independent press. Right. The government-owned press will try to calm the surface and say, okay, no, there's nothing happening. No, this is just the opposition.
Yes.
But then the opposition also will be trying to open up and try to reveal, what is happening, right? But if you don't know it, you won't see it. But it is there.
Okay.
And it is dangerous.
All right. So tell us, where are you living now, and where are you living these days if you're no longer living in Zimbabwe?
Right. When I left Zimbabwe, I went to Germany, where I stayed for 3 years on an Icon fellowship. Right. I was the guest writer of a novel. And then when that fellowship was finished, I had the choice to seek for asylum. Right. And then I got this offer here in Mexico City, still with the same organization, for another 3 years.
Okay.
And then I thought, no, I cannot take asylum, because asylum would mean that I will be unemployable, unemployable. You cannot seek for a job for like 2 years.
I see.
And I had a family in Zimbabwe to support. And the other option was to go to Zimbabwe. And Zimbabwe at that time also, it was a disaster.
Right.
Nothing was working again. So I opted for Mexico. I came here, 3 years scholarship, where I continued writing on this book, the excerpt which I showed you. And when that scholarship ended, also I had a choice to go back to Zimbabwe. I thought, no, things are still not working. And I'm also studying online for a degree in computer science. And going back to Zimbabwe, where if you are living in the township, sometimes there's no electricity, there's no internet.
Right.
It will make studying for me difficult. And I'm also studying programming. And if you're studying programming, you have to have 24-hour internet.
Oh, wow.
So I decided to stay here a little while. And I got permanent residency. So now I'm working in IT support.
Oh, okay.
For a living, although I still continue pursuing my writing and programming on the side, but which are the center of everything that I do.
Okay, so does your work permit you time to write, or how much time does it allow you?
Right. I work the normal 8-hour shift, and then when I get home, or like right now, I'm working at home because of I'm working remotely because of the pandemic.
Yes.
Right. So after I knock off from my job, I just take a nap. Sometimes I take a walk, but I don't like taking walks these days because people are pretty much careless outside,
Yes.
They scare me. People scare me outside.
Okay.
Right, like no mask. And then after that, I have my 2-hour every day, 2 hours of either studying or writing.
Okay, I see. And have you become fluent in Spanish as well?
Unfortunately, my Spanish is not so good. I can hear, but speaking is a little bit difficult for me because most of the people that I know here, they speak English to me.
Okay, I see. All right.
So it's difficult for me to learn Spanish unless and if I am with people who don't understand English also, and then that's where I practice my little Spanish. Like, for example, taxi drivers,
yes,
grocery store.
But there's so many great writers who write in Spanish and for so many centuries. Do you read any writers in Spanish?
Yeah, I've been reading one, 100 Years of Solitude.
Oh, that's my favorite novel, probably. Yeah, Garcia Marquez.
Garcia Marquez, but I haven't finished it. I think I've been reading it for a year. I'm halfway through. I had to stop because I had to stop because of studying and also writing. But yes. I finished my studying in January, and the first thing that I'll do is to finish that book because I just love that book too. Yeah.
Yeah. I think one of the interesting things about you as a writer is you work in all genres, as far as I know. I mean, you're a fiction writer. Let's just say you're a short story writer, you're a novelist, you're a playwright, and you're a poet.
And also TV.
Oh, TV. So I find that's a very interesting thing about you because so for me, for example, I primarily write fiction and I've done poetry, but I can't do the two at the same time in the same space. And nonfiction was kind of foreign to me until recently, but you seem to be pretty comfortable with all those different forms.
Right. Okay. In the beginning, I wrote across all these genres, poetry, theater, and also prose, to teach myself to write.
Okay.
To teach myself to write. Like I was working on a novel, my very first book, and then along the way, I thought that my dialogue was not good enough, you know. And the only way that I could teach myself how to write dialogue was to go into theater.
Okay.
Then I went into theater for some time, you know, and I think I got the dialogue part right. And then one day I also thought, no, I want to make this poetic. And I'm reading it, but it doesn't sound poetic. And then I decided to read and write poetry.
Okay.
And I was lucky that I got published in poetry. I have had some plays shown and also won an award in theater. I also have written drama for TV that has been shown too, in fact, locally in Zimbabwe, in the local language, in Ndebele.
Okay.
And so, yeah. And also another trick that I use is that, for example, if I write a short story, I would tear it apart and adapt it into theater.
Oh, okay. I see.
Make it a theater piece. And my last book that was published first began as a poem, like a one-page poem. Then one day when I was reading the poem, I thought, no, this is a story. Then I adapted the poem into a story. So it works for me. Okay.
And you also had a book published in Spanish translation recently, didn't you? Yes.
Right. That has been my most successful book, I think, Running with Mother. It was published by Weaver Press in 2012.
Okay.
And I got a lot of fire in Zimbabwe from government-owned newspapers who, in one of them, they call me an enemy of the state.
Oh,
because
wow.
I was writing about Kukurahundi, you know, the Mugabe massacre of Ndebele people, and also some Shona people, and also some other ethnic groups.
Right.
Right. And then this political paper, which we believe is also run by, there are some CIOs, you know, Central Intelligence Organization people writing for it. Those are the people who started like attacking me. And that is also part of why I left Zimbabwe, because it was at that time that I was also receiving these calls, these anonymous calls. Right. And this book has been lucky. It has been translated into Italian, into German, and now into Spanish by HarperCollins. And I'm still hoping maybe for more translations, if possible.
Oh, that's great. Congratulations on that. That's good.
Right, thank you.
Yes. So I wanted to talk to you about your latest book. We're publishing 2 excerpts from your novel in progress in Taint Taint Taint, publishing 2 excerpts. And could you tell us a little bit about the latest project?
Right. This latest project, I started it in Germany in 2014, you know. It is set in ancient Africa, in the kingdom. I just decided, okay, fine, I've been writing all these contemporary settings. Why not try to write, you know, put something far, 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 far back in time in Africa? And so I came up with this concept of, I don't want to talk much about it. Right.
Okay.
Right. So I came up with this concept of a family of iron workers. You know, that's also what I wanted to celebrate, you know, that we had technology in Africa even before white people and colonialism came. Right. You know, even before colonialism, we had spears, we had arrows with iron. People in Africa were able to mine, to identify, you know, iron ore, mine the iron. Yes. They were also able to like smelt it, forge it, make weapons, make tools. Yes. So that is my family, right? And then there are also other circumstances. that happened to that family, which become the story.
There's a love story, for example, at least from one of the excerpts. There seems to be a blossoming love story, you know.
Right. There's box. Yes. We had festivals. We had festivals with markets. Yes. Right. And in those markets, there were also competitions. You know. So, but I am inventing some of these competitions. Right. And say, okay, yes. Yeah, I'm inventing some of them, and right, it's pretty much exciting to be an inventor of some of these competitions and the games and the rules. But right. We know that we had these competitions, and that is also what I want to celebrate. You know, just to show, you know, Africa before colonialism and any influences, whether Arab or European. Right.
Yes. Yeah, some of the, in fact, remind me a little bit of the Hunger Games or something like that, you know.
Right. Maybe I was watching too much of that. Game of Thrones.
Yeah, but how much of the book is, how would I put it? How much of it is based on research, and how much of it is just, you know, to what degree is it just your imagination, or did you feel the need to do research about certain things? Or
right, the only major research that I did for the book was to read a book on ancient African metallurgy.
Okay.
You know, metallurgy, that I had to read that because it is a big part of the book. Right, I bought a book, I read the book, and then much of it is my imagination and also what I know, you know, yeah. What I know from our folk tales, and also what I want to do now. Like right now, I'm in a point where I want to transition the telling of the story, where I want to study African proverbs.
Okay.
African proverbs, and try to tell it, you know, with infused proverbs, because that was also part of our teaching through proverbs.
Yes.
I don't know how I will do it, but I will do it.
Well, that was what Achebe did famously in Things Fall Apart, I suppose. He used the use of the proverbs. But
right.
But this book also has a number of supernatural elements, which I think is a new direction for your work as well. You know.
Right. I think this influence came from my father. My father was like a family storyteller.
Okay.
He was always telling us when we were children, folklore. We had no TV at home. My father couldn't afford to buy a TV. So he would tell us stories instead when we were young.
Oh, wow.
And so I just decided to also explore that part of mythology, you know, it's because I used to enjoy it when I was a child, just listening to those folk tales. Yes. And I'm thinking, okay, let me also try to throw it in. If it doesn't work, I'll change it.
Okay. Well, I'm really enjoying. I really enjoy what you share with us in the magazine. So I'm very proud to be publishing it. Thank you for that.
Right. Thank you.
Yes.
That's inspiring. That means I'm on the right track coming from you.
That is true. But you know, you're speaking about your father just made me think of something. It must be, in some ways, it must be lonely to be in exile. That is to say, you must miss your family, and given the situation, you can't go to Zimbabwe to visit. Or can you go?
Okay, you're right. But right now, I have a daughter in Zimbabwe who is finishing university this year. No, next year.
Okay.
Who I'm supporting. That is also one of the reasons why I'm here, because if I was to go back to Zimbabwe, I wouldn't be able to support her because there are no jobs. And she won't be able to get the education. And I have a mother who is 84.
Wow.
84. But my father passed away a long time back when I was 18.
Okay.
And that is one of the reasons why I did not go to university, because I had to, you know, leave school and go and look for a job in order to support my family and my brothers also.
Yes.
Right. So yes, I miss them, but the circumstances, you know, are just like that. We have now electronic media.
Yes.
WhatsApp, WhatsApp, I think WhatsApp, that it came along also at this period.
Yeah, it's a great
Because-
thing, isn't it?
Right, because if it had been, let's say like 15 years ago, I would be writing letters and waiting for a month for the letter to get home
Oh,
and
wow.
get a reply.
Yes, yes. So,
But I will go to Zimbabwe in the next 2-3 years.
okay, that's good to know. Well, thank you, Chris. Thanks for sitting down and having this talk. And everyone will be excited to read your work in the magazine. So thank you again.
All right.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you for
All
the
right,
opportunity.
Oh, sure.
Okay.
Anytime. All right. Sharp. Okay.
All right. Sharp,
All
sharp.
right. Okay.
You know that one? You know that
I-
one? Sharp.
I learned